welcome back to As If, a contemporary art podcast with me, Lisa Fevral. And I know it's been a couple of weeks since more than a couple of weeks since last episode, but listen, I am having a really hard time keeping up with everything that I do, like in terms of like my online work and whatever, and I literally edit every single day. And yet it still is like that sometimes. Also, someone on my last episode, I think it was the last episode, was like, girl, you need to like remove all the talking in the beginning before you start talking about this topic or that topic or whatever. And I just want to say that this is a podcast and not a YouTube video. I know it could be misleading because it's available on YouTube, but it is a podcast and it's supposed to be a bit more organic and it's supposed to have less jump cuts and stuff like that. And I still do them. If you watch it or you listen to it, maybe you can tell, but I still do cuts just because that's what I do. Like, I cannot listen to myself yap in post-production and not like cut things out or whatever. In any case, today we're going to be talking about Aespa and Gregory Crewdson, and I know that it seems like maybe a strange combination, but I don't think it's that strange because if you're not familiar, Aespa is this group from South Korea. They are a quartet. Their concept wasn't really alien-esque per se in their first 4 years of their career. Their first storyline was very much metaverse, your avatars and other things like that, kind of gaming, online, digital type of stuff. And I think that they honestly kind of had a very loose idea of what they were doing in terms of their first releases, mostly because they wanted a storyline, all right? And they wanted it to be elaborate, but at the same time, they didn't really want to commit to a very distinct storyline at the same time, which was very confusing. They basically had like a villain. The entire storyline was basically about defeating that digital villain or whatever, which is honestly, I'm not really following Aespa specifically for the storylines because again, the storylines are not fleshed out. But I do really enjoy how high concept they are. I enjoy how much they commit to their concepts. And the thing that happened in between the last storyline and the new one that they introduced with this latest single, I believe that the producer who made the group lost all of his influence on the group entirely. And corporate politics of it all were really confusing to follow. Maybe the guy who created the group still has some kind of connections to it, but they kind of stopped being his project after the release of Girls, which was their mini album. The next one, which was Welcome to My World, I believe. And that mini album and the next mini album, Drama, were they weren't bad per se. I don't think that they were bad in terms of music. Some songs were definitely weak, but overall, they weren't bad musically. However, in terms of the storyline and especially in terms of visuals, they were kind of not matching up to what they released previously. And for example, Drama it looked pretty, it sounded good, the title track, but it was kind of really weak in terms of what Aespa is supposed to represent. They kind of became the exact copy of every other fourth gen group that's not trying to be New Jeans 2.0, you know? Which means they had very little appeal outside of just, being a pretty expensive group that produces really high budget music videos and other things like that, So it was kind of one of those things where you were looking at it and thinking, okay, but what's the point of still having this group produce anything if you're going to not even try to have that high-tech or sci-fi look to them, right? It doesn't have to be specifically sci-fi in a very formulaic way. For example, when they released Better Things after Drama, it was kind of tropical in a way, but it also had a bit of that Winx kind of aesthetic, by which I mean that it looked kind of otherworldly and magical, but also had some tech stuff involved that made it look like it was still belonging in the Aespa world. And also, the photo shoots were honestly absolutely amazing and so fitting for Aespa that I was honestly gagged by the photo shoots. However, I was very disappointed that those photo shoots were not really, they weren't part of the initial release of Drama, which meant that the release did not get any physical pictures in the album. They didn't add it anywhere, to like any other release afterwards or anything like that. So it was kind of a waste in my opinion. So I feel like they kind of realized that Better Things in terms of aesthetics really worked better than whatever they were doing before. So they went back to that aesthetic. They changed the tropical part of it to just kind of city girl vibes with Supernova. So Supernova is opening a new chapter for the group, and if you haven't really listened to them, I mean, if you like hyperpop PC music, if you like experimental synth electro music, you're probably gonna like their music and you're gonna enjoy the visuals and stuff like that, so check it out. But I am finally happy with their release after God knows how long, because the thing is, Savage, even though the name is stupid, was actually their best song for a while, and I think that Better Things is not that strong in terms of being a title track. However, it was very well executed in terms of visuals and in terms of, honestly, the music video, everything. It was really, really cute. I was kind of gagged by Supernova. Supernova is fun. It actually made me have fun, which is really difficult lately because I am in a bit of a pickle when it comes to what is going on. It's kind of really weighing on me. So I was pleasantly surprised at that music video or that song. Was kind of like, made me giggle a little, not gonna lie. Like, it was kind of fun, and I think that their new chapter, which by what I'm seeing seems to be a new storyline entirely, that this time they are basically a bunch of aliens that showed up on Earth. I don't know what the storyline is going to be in the title track, because this is a double title track. The first song came out May 13th, and the second one is going to be, I think, 27th or something like that. And I'm not sure what it's going to be, but based on Supernova, I am pretty happy with what they went with, because they definitely have entirely used up the first concept with meta worlds and whatever. And I honestly was surprised that they even went for a meta world or for anything online and tech related, because none of this type of AI and meta and avatars and other things like that, none of this is strong enough of a concept for a group that needs to have a lot of personality, right? Because when you're making them into some kind of aliens that are literally wrecking the city, it's a lot more fun to observe and think about what kind of personalities they might have, those characters that they represent, than a few people who are using social media accounts and how there's like a version of them online and yada yada yada. It's just not as satisfying in terms of storyline, in my opinion, but also, like, obviously it can all be written better. I'm kind of curious if they're actually going to commit to a storyline this time or not. I don't really think it matters that much, because I don't think that it's that viable, because a lot of groups have these storylines, and I think that they're always messy about it, because, to be honest, K-pop is just too much of a business. It's too much of a commercial production for it to have a strong storyline that actually matters. So I'm curious what they're gonna do. I'm curious. And I am very happy with the song that we got and the full album that's coming. I'm really excited about that too. I actually had a whole collection of their albums going until Drama. I did not buy a single album of Drama because I just did not give a flying fuck about it. And like, I thought the makeup was cute or whatever, but the photo shoots, the only reason why I ever buy albums with, photo books, it's for the work that's been done, for the concept, for the photo shoots and other things like that, because I really like physical images. I like physical prints of pictures. If I want to get a bit of inspiration, I prefer to have like a few pictures up, even on the wall. Like, I sometimes switch them up and whatever, but I have images that I print out, because for some reason, like, having them physically in my hands does a lot more for me than just having them on a screen. And I genuinely did not really care that much for Drama photo shoots. The one where they were really huge and the city was tiny was cute, but it's again a complete rehash, a complete rip-off Red Velvet's concept for Queendom. And it wasn't even... Bitch, let's be for real. Even back then, when they did it for Queendom, it was quite underwhelming, considering what we're used to with Red Velvet and with SM in general. Like, back then, when they released Queendom, I was like, Like, is that it? I mean, it was at least colorful, and it was the first time they've done that, I think, in SM. But actually, maybe I'm wrong about that, because I haven't been like a fan of first and second gen. I wasn't there, but I'm just confused, okay, as to why they decided to recycle the most like kind of applicable to anybody concept. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. In any case, Drama was not bad on its own, but it was bad for Aespa. I don't think that it's a very good fit for Aespa. One of the songs that I really love for Aespa is their cover of Dreams Come True that was produced by Boa. I would love it. Love it. If Boa were to produce Aespa. And also I want Boa to release another album like Better, because I need it, low-key. This new concept, this new video, you should go watch it. The music video, I really love that moment where Winter is literally holding to a pole and she's spinning, just continuously fucking twirling on it until she gets completely blown off of it by the wind, by the really, really strong wind. It's kind of like a storm or whatever the fuck. And it's kind of, it honestly, I saw someone tweet about it and I was like, that's exactly what it reminded me of. But it reminded me of that edit that someone made of Wonyoung when they released one of the like albums a while ago. Oh, who cares? It was one of their albums where they were dancing on a plane, like on a wing of a plane, right? And someone edited it to make it look like Wonyoung completely face planted on the plane, and it genuinely reminded me of that meme, because the way that they edited it, that video, it genuinely felt like they were trying to make a meme, and honestly they succeeded. I feel like I should start using it in my videos because it's funny looking. I mean, like, come on now, genuinely made me giggle. And yeah, the song is great. I believe that it was produced by Them Joins, as per usual. Really interesting songs. In any case, finally Aespa is back to making something that is interesting to look at. And don't hate me if you enjoy Drama. I'm not telling you that Drama is a bad song. I'm not telling you that the music video is bad, but it's not a good fit for the brand, for the group. It's just not. And I think that I'm kind of happy that they returned to their concept-based releases that are, related to their original ideas. The reason why we're talking about Aespa and them being aliens that are invading Earth, while at the same time we're talking about Gregory Crewdson, who is a photographer, an American photographer, is because Gregory Crewdson is known. I would say that this is his most famous series, and the name of the series is Twilight. It is basically a series of like 40 pictures that he's made from 98 to 2002, and it's very high production, really elaborate pictures that have some supernatural aspects to it. If you are like me, like around my age or whatever, you're probably more familiar with someone like Petra Collins, who has a similar style, I would say, where it's kind of a set that is built. It is oftentimes related to North American suburbia. It is also a bit creepy because of the supernatural aspects that are kind of just inserted in the narrative in really weird ways, where you can't quite tell why the hell what is happening. However, it does attract your attention. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about him, because there was an image that kind of stuck with me that I saw when I was back in university, and we were talking about photography and Vancouver Photography School, because Vancouver is mostly, as a city, it's mostly known for Vancouver Photography School. It was the biggest probably art thing that came out of Vancouver. Crewdson is not really the same as those photographers, but they oftentimes are covered in the same classes when you take photography classes or art history classes, because they are all in the latter half of the 20th century, and they're all either on location, or like Crewdson, he takes pictures in the same way as people produce movies, like he sets up a whole scene. It's usually either on set, on location, where you can control a lot of the environment. I'm not gonna lie to you, there are some things that I really like about his work. However, those things are also the same things that I like about David Lynch or Petra Collins, or honestly anyone who does cinematic type of looks in their photography, big sets, other things like that. There's a lot that I wonder about when I look at people's work, and I think that that's actually something that I can provide when it comes to contemporary art conversation, and that is, how the fuck do they pay for it, right? And that is honestly a topic that I think most people are interested in, unless you are either rich or rich enough, or you got lucky quite early on in your career that you have this mentality of like work equals success, right? Because sometimes, you realize life is a bit random. And I think a lot of people kind of have this mentality of work equals success, which is true in some instances, but most of the time it's not really true, because just think about, I don't know, the biggest artists that exist today that are making the most money today, right? Who have a lot of critical acclaim. A lot of the times when I look into their works, I don't even find anything that is actually unique or transformative or interesting for someone who is in the industry. Maybe for people who are not familiar, if you just show them this picture and you tell them that this is the best picture that's ever been taken in the 21st century, they're going to believe you. I'm not sure if that would work, but maybe that's a possibility, that someone would just, take your word for it. But in many cases, when I look at people's art, I'm immediately struck by how they made it, how personal it is, and most of all, what kind of realities about their lives those works show me. For example, David Wojnarowicz, right, and his art. And I do not know his entire life. I'm not going to claim to. I don't remember where he got his education or anything like that. But I remember that looking at his work, I can tell that this is someone who knows this. This is someone who lived this. This is someone whose art is not about the money that they can put into their art. Doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that art that costs a lot of money is not real art or not good art. But to me, the transparency of where the money is coming from and how the artists got to where they are is very, very important. And the conversation that is around Crewdson is always vague. It's kind of one of those things where no matter how much I Google shit about it, it's hard to find why, for example, this guy is actually obsessed with suburbia. And listen, the thing is, he can say that he prefers living in the suburbs of Massachusetts, right? But he was born in a pretty good neighborhood in Brooklyn. So immediately, just based on these things, you try to understand whether this is actually something that he knows with his entire being, or if it's something that he's trying to exploit. Because obviously there are pictures where he's portraying people of a lower class. There are pictures where you can clearly see that it is people who at least it's insinuated that they're struggling financially, or in terms of health, or in terms of just the American dream, or whatever the fuck. It's oftentimes brought up when people talk about Crewdson's work. Honestly, it's constantly, he's showing the underbelly of American dream. And it's like, well, but do I give a fuck to listen to him talk about it, right? So that's why I do actually think that it's important to know the artist in terms of their background. And I'm not saying that it is entirely stripping away someone's art of meaning or of importance or anything like that, as much as it is just cracking the veneer for me. Because even when it comes to, for example, controlled environments like schools, right, where you would think that people in schools, artists in schools, they would have for example, a cap on how much they can spend, or limits on things like, for example, somebody helping you in your project, right? For example, in my school, that was not the case. We had people who literally had someone else build this set for them, and that set was their piece of art, and other things like that. So even within controlled environments like schools, artists are not really on the same footing in that sense. So oftentimes you kind of have to rely on only the concept. Now, I am very much into conceptual art, obviously. I personally think that the concept is very important, or to me, the concept is basically mostly the reason why this is even a thing. You're not just randomly doing shit. You need to know why you're doing it this way, or why you even think that it's important to do it, and why you especially think that it's important to show it. However, I think a lot of people obviously use it as an excuse to rely on cultural signifiers. So for example, all of the art that's produced in the West, oftentimes it is all about the way that you market yourself rather than what you actually make. And what happens is you basically have a bunch of people who think more about how they're going to write their artist bio than about their art. I find myself thinking about that oftentimes, and I hate that. I hate that so much because I genuinely cannot stand the amount of people whose work is just about nothing. Like, they try to exploit their negative experiences like all of us do in capitalist society. However, it's falling flat, but it's working still for them in terms of success and other things like that, because, for example, they can afford to not be exhibited in certain places. They can afford to wait until they're picked up by a better gallery, a better representation, whatever the fuck. So you have this kind of useless art society. It's not, it basically lacks a lot of just like life in it, which is the issue for me, you know? So once talking about Crewdson's work, there are photos, for example, that I personally find interesting. I enjoy the look of them, but I have questions immediately. Like, for example, how did he afford to make pictures of that size with a production that expensive, with a crew that massive? I know how much that's gonna cost, and it's gonna be a pretty fucking penny. So immediately I'm sitting there like, how did this guy manage to put it together? And it doesn't mean that his work is bad because of that. However, the fact that he's never addressed it, the fact that he never talks about it, the fact that his background in terms of his privileges and stuff like that is not discussed ever anywhere, it's suspicious to me. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that people who actually come from a place of wanting to make good art, people who come from a place of wanting to make art that's not about just jerking each other off, sitting like, you know, just having like a circle jerk with a bunch of artists, those people usually want to talk about how these things came to be and why their particular position in their society, in their immediate surroundings, is a good fit for this particular conversation or for this particular artwork to be made by them. You know what I mean? I would much rather listen to someone who is an immigrant talk about the American dream than someone who was raised in an affluent area somewhere in Brooklyn talk about it, right? I don't know the specifics of his like upbringing or anything, don't get me wrong. So I don't want you to take this as like Crewdson was rich or whatever. Like, I don't fucking know. But based on how his career was handled, this is what I'm seeing, at least, you know? It's the same thing with a lot of other artists and why their works speak to me more. For example, artists who were doing zines, and especially it's funny because you can feel, oftentimes you can, not always, but oftentimes you can feel when someone is making zines because they think they're gonna get this poverty core look to them that they find desirable for their career, and when it actually comes from lived experience and it's just the way that they're making their art because this is what's available to them. This is kind of like their visual vernacular. This is what they're doing. This is what is available to them, right? And it's such a difference. It's such a huge difference. I genuinely think that from my experience, any art that actually was talking about anything interesting, every time most people who have this access to institutions, to universities, to galleries, to everywhere, for some reason, they have a really hard time finding people who like their work during the time that they're making it. At least this is what I've noticed, for example, with all of the artists who've made zines in the past. Like, we're actually going to talk about it in the next episode or the episode after that. I don't know which one it's going to be exactly, but it's coming up, because there is a new exhibition in Vancouver Art Gallery that is about zines. And if you don't know what zines are, it's basically small magazines, small releases, and they were usually just kind of folded pieces of paper. Sometimes it was literally made just from an A4 piece of paper. Sometimes it was something like a few papers fucking stapled together or some shit. Like, it was kind of very much just ad hoc, DIY, other shit like that, you know? And it was usually made by punks, by marginalized folks, by people who were speaking about the AIDS crisis, what it was happening when they were going through it. There's like a very interesting zine that's about that, very directly talking about the issues that were going on and that were actually frowned upon by institutions to even talk about. And now an institution is making an exhibition out of it and charging people to go see those works. However, I talked to the curators who put that show together, and they seem to be at least aware of this whole conversation. They seem to have thought about it, and they don't seem to be ignorant on the matter. And it is a very interesting topic to discuss in general, if it's even fair that those same institutions get to profit off of these works nowadays, while at the same time it does expose these works to a lot more people. While at the same time, again, it's fucking expensive to go there. How much is a ticket to go see Vancouver Art Gallery show? General admission, $30. $30 to go see zines that cost $1 back then, or like not even $1 fucking cents, and zines that were made by punks and anarchists and other people. And what I did like about those curators, that they talked about the fact that they asked the artists whether they would give them a go ahead to use their works instead of asking people who own their stuff, because it was honestly a bit disheartening to be walking around that fucking gallery before, because I went to a press release, and we'll talk about it more later, like in the other episode. But it was really strange to be walking around and seeing the amount of credits to rich people who bought those works. You know, it's like, belongs to so and so, this family, like Christine and David something, and whatever the fuck. And you're just like sitting there like, goddamn, it's so crazy that these are the people, especially in America, because you never had this you never had an actual revolution, you never had money that's been made through slavery being redistributed back to the people the way that it happened in some other countries. It's really strange to be seeing all that and being like, God damn, like these zines that cost a lot now because of their place in history, because of what they have achieved back then. The artists didn't make that much off of them back then. Now some rich fucks own it and give it to galleries to make money off of. It's very, very strange to be involved in this. It's like, on one hand, I do want people to see this. I do want it to be curated well. I do want people to be introduced to this in a way that would be interesting. So you want good curators, because sometimes you get bad ones and the show just sucks ass, you know? This one actually makes sense. I actually liked the show, the way that it was put together. It was this guy from Whitney and another guy from Boston Museum, and they did a good job. But it's always going to make me feel queasy, and I guess it's kind of a part of just being like always leaning towards anarchy in general. Just like I do have a really hard time with the way that things are, and especially how even when it's confronted, even when it's talked about, nothing actually gets like really changed much. I guess I'm happy that with this specific show, they did actually ask the artists, and the artists were involved in this, because otherwise this would have been a complete bust. But like conceptually speaking, from a curation standpoint, we'll talk more about it. I'll tell you more about the zines that were there. There was a lot of zines that were made by Black women that were really good. That's usually the type of art I like from America, to be honest. But it's just, there's a lot to talk about there. And when it comes to Crewdson, I feel like I just don't like how little is really said about his upbringing, you know? Like, how did you manage to make this huge scale photographs that many artists who are in the industry for 50 fucking years cannot afford to do, right? Like, how did that come to be? If you got grants and whatever, maybe mention that. Or if you have been raised rich, that's also important, because you are literally consistently talking about the experience of people who are living lower middle class or lower class. There's so many pictures of just like women especially sitting in like the woods naked in the middle of like a clearing with a bunch of sheds or whatever around. Like, it's definitely not a rich woman's experience. And also another thing about Crewdson that really, really bothers me, and I couldn't find anyone talking about it, which really fucking surprised me, is that he consistently, like constantly, has nudity in his works, and it's always women. I'm not saying that it's particularly erotic. No, not really. But why? It's kind of like that. That's my main fucking question is always, girl, why? And he talked about how like, oh, there's a difference between being nude and being naked, and he is interested in nakedness. And it's like, yeah, like I know what you mean. Just because I do have a background in the arts, I can immediately understand what you're talking about, the difference between nude and naked. However, it's fucking weird to be constantly talking about someone else's experience, people that you are not them. You are not a woman, okay? You do not have a female experience to be commenting on consistently and only on that. Why are they always there? Why are they naked? And why are most of them young women naked? There is a couple photos where it's not a young woman, and it's like, still, I don't give a fuck that it's like an older woman. Whoop-de-doo. It's still not something that I want men to be talking about, to be fucking honest. I understand that you can talk about whatever you want, but just like I have said that before, maybe not on the podcast, but somewhere else, that I personally would love for men to stop talking about women's experience in general. Like, why? Just why are you always there? Why are you always somewhere in your not in your lane? It just doesn't make any fucking sense. It's kind of like if I were to make art about the black experience in America. What the fuck would I know about that? Even though I do learn these things just to educate myself, just to know what the fuck is up, doesn't mean that I can, like, I know it with my bones. And that's the type of thing that I want to hear from an artist. I want your experience that you know in your bones. That was something that is fucking in your DNA. That's how close that shit is to your heart, okay? I'm really not interested in consistently listening to men talking about women. It's absolutely just like mind numbing. And it's kind of like the whole conversation with Poor Things, that movie. I understand the whole conversation, you know, like some people think that there's some aspects that were done well, some aspects that were done not well at all. I have seen the essays on it. I have participated in discussions on it. And I personally think that honestly, I'm just tired of movies that are talking about the female experience that are made by men. Why are they there? Why are they there? Why are they the ones calling the shots? Why are they the ones who are holding the camera, framing the shot? Why are they the ones deciding on what happens to the main character and how she is in charge of her sexuality? Especially they love to make movies about female sexuality. What would you know, bitch? What would you know? Why are you talking on it? I don't understand. I don't get it. It's just genuinely annoying to me. I'm not gonna lie. And like, I don't want to be discouraging from involving different stories in your work. I just don't think it makes any sense for them to be making works that are about things that they don't understand with their entire existence. Like, to me, it's really annoying when I watch movies about the immigrant experience and they're not made by immigrants. It's like, what do you know? What do you know about that? It's kind of weird because, like, I feel like a lot of people don't see me as an immigrant. I don't mean Canadians, but I mean like people from outside of Canada, people whose first language is not English, for example. They can't really hear the accent or anything like that anymore. And they oftentimes are like, what would you know? And it's like, well, I am an immigrant. I'm not a child of an immigrant. I'm not a first gen. I actually am an immigrant. So to me, whenever I watch a movie about an immigrant experience and it's not an immigrant speaking on it, it's like, well, why? Why? It's genuinely every single time I'm just like baffled by it. And it doesn't mean that you can't include it in your stories. I just don't understand why you make it the main story of things that you make artistically. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. In any case, I do want to mention Crewdson's picture from 1998 from Twilight. It is called A Beer Dream. That picture was the one that kind of got stuck in my head for a while, that I did not remember his name until I went back to find his name to make this video. But I did remember this image, so that's how I could find his works, because to me it was a really interesting setup. I'm gonna explain to you real quick what it looked like. So it's like just like a suburban street, a couple of houses, whatever. It's nighttime or twilight time. I don't know if it's supposed to be nighttime or not, but it's kind of dark. It's kind of like on the cusp of being entirely dark already. And then there's a light that looks to me, I think the implication is supposed to be that this is kind of like a light that comes from an alien ship, like usually like a beam. And I think that the look of it is a bit less alien-esque because of the angle at which it's at. So usually when you look at a picture and it's supposed to insinuate that it's an alien ship, the beam is straight. It goes straight down from the craft, and usually it's less of a stage light. In this picture, it looks as if it's a stage light, but at the same time, because of the way that it's framed, the way that it is portrayed, it kind of makes you feel like it's supposed to be an alien abduction situation. And I personally really, really love that idea. I love the way that the image is lit. Honestly, the lighting in Crewdson's pictures, it's on point. It is. There's a lot of pictures that I personally enjoy of his in terms of lighting. There's one that is like a take on Ophelia, and usually that picture is used, I think it's the cover of his book, his Twilight book, and is genuinely very interesting looking. It's like a mid-century living room, and it's flooded. And there's a woman in the middle, kind of in the same pose as Ophelia in that famous painting from like 19th century. I really like the framing. I really like what it looks like. I like the lighting. It does remind me, if we compare to some photographers who work right now, who are new, I would say that it's very much Petra Collins-y. So if you are familiar with pop culture and you are familiar, for example, with Olivia Rodrigo's music videos, you have seen this style of setup, this style of set design that is Petra Collins' aesthetic. And I think that Petra has a lot in common with Crewdson in terms of the way that she approaches her sets and her lighting in them. Personally, I think that if you like Petra Collins' work, I think that you should check out Crewdson, because you're gonna have some interesting visual ideas to flip through to see. However, I'm going to tell you that there's going to be a lot of naked women for no reason, and no naked men, by the way. Where the fuck are the dongs? That's the question. Where the fuck are the dongs? If I'm going to see a hoo-ha, and I'm sorry for saying it like that, I just don't want to get demonetized, you gotta show me the dong as well, okay? Okay? Just to make it fair, bitch. Just to make it fair. Anyway, this has been fun. A bit of an alien, a bit of a UFO situation, a bit of a UFO episode. I'm excited to talk about the zines in next episodes. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching and listening, whatever you're doing. Bye.